A few weeks ago, I was doing a podcast with Liz Webster, and I thought that she is a very strong and principled individual who knows exactly what she's doing and exactly how to get it done. And I salute her enormously. The latest farmer protests, therefore, in Whitehall are taking place now. The tractors are arriving now. There is striking demonstration of the growing discontent within Britain's agricultural community as thousands of farmers are coming back onto the streets demanding a rethink on the inheritance tax changes set to take effect in April 2026. Organised by the Save British Farming, led by figures like Liz Webster, this movement highlights the deep concerns that farmers hold about their livelihoods, the future of family farming, and Britain's food security. And while Nigel Farage has eagerly attached himself to the cause, and Kemi Badenoch is nowhere to be seen, the fundamental grievances of these farmers stand independent of any political opportunism. And Farage is quite literally leaping on a bandwagon or leaping on a on a tractor trailer. The proposed changes to inheritance tax involve scrapping a long-standing exemption that allowed working farms to be passed down tax-free. And under the new rules, farms worth over £1 million will be subject to a 20% tax rate on assets exceeding this threshold. And while this is lower than the standard 40% inheritance tax, it still presents a significant financial burden for family-run farms that are asset-rich but cash-poor and struggling to recover from the bashing of Brexit. And that's really the point. You have to see this in the context of Brexit and in the context of austerity and in the context of the serious failures that took place over the end of the EU tenure. And so the farmers have been hit from so many directions. They don't need another hit. And it's not enough to say, well, they were taxed like this before. They can be taxed again. Many farmers fear they will be forced off their land. They fear machinery or livestock they'll be forced to sell that to meet tax obligations threatening the viability of their businesses. And the Treasury claims that only around 500 estates a year will be impacted. But actually, they've already recognised that that's wrong, in the same way as they claimed that there would be very few schools hit by the VAT on private education, but that again has proven wrong. The Treasury doesn't really know what it's talking about. It hasn't done its work, and that shouldn't be that surprising because so many people in Parliament at the moment are only interested in the next headline and they don't actually read the articles. The National Farmers Union in particular has disputed the Treasury's claims, citing data that nearly 2/3 of farms in England have a net value exceeding £1 million, and critics argue that the government's estimates fail to account for combined business and agricultural property reliefs that have historically allowed farms to remain operational across generations. And farmers are warning that this new tax will lead to total devastation in the industry. Many describe how family farms, often built over several generations, will be unable to survive if significant portions of their estates must be sold off to cover tax liabilities. And who's going to buy that stuff? People who are going to build solar farms, people who are not going to respect the environment. Andrew Long, a farmer from Bury St Edmunds, captures the frustration that many feel this tax won't bring in that much money, but it will bring total devastation to the farming industry. It makes no sense. His wife, Gina Long, said it's ridiculous. If farmers were fishermen, it would be like telling them to sell their boats but keep fishing. The analogy captures the illogical nature of a policy that risks undermining Britain's food production and rural economy, and with the cost of farmland already rising because of housing developments and corporate investment, the tax will disproportionately harm small and medium-sized farms rather than wealthy landowners. And Farage, ever the master of political theatre, has sought to position himself at the forefront of this movement, calling for the abolition of inheritance tax entirely. But he is an unlikely champion for British farming, given his past enthusiasm for American trade deals, which many in the agricultural sector fear would open the door to lower standard food imports anyway, undercutting British farmers. Liz Webster, the founder of Save British Farming, was quick to dismiss Farage's involvement. Nigel likes to be seen as part of the farming community. But you can't have your cake and eat it. He's the first person to want an American trade deal, which would destroy British farming. I think Farage just likes dressing up in a cap and +4s. Instead, the leadership of this protest lies with those who have long championed farmers' rights without political opportunism, figures like the NFU President Tom Bradshaw, who has emphasised the need for sustained and lawful protest to keep pressure on the government. And Chancellor Rachel Reeves has defended her policy. Of course she has, because she hasn't bothered to reread it, arguing that difficult decisions are necessary to repair public finances and that reform strikes the right balance. However, this stance has done little to quell anger among farmers, especially as Labour MPs in rural constituencies begin to feel the heat. The protest coincides with a debate in Westminster triggered by a petition with over 148,000 signatures calling for the preservation of inheritance tax exemptions for working farms. With the NFU and the Country Land and Business Association pushing for urgent reconsideration, the government faces increased pressure to modify its approach. Even some Labour MPs are privately questioning the wisdom of pushing ahead without a full impact assessment, without doing the homework. And this is the fundamental problem of the present Labour government and the present Conservative opposition. It's led by people who haven't bothered to do the homework, who haven't read the documents. Lazy people who just want to command headlines. The tractors, and Farage is among that group, by the way, the tractors in Whitehall are not just a spectacle, they represent a deep-seated anxiety about the future of British farming. And while Nigel Farage may attempt to co-opt the movement for his own political gain, the real story is one of multi-generational farming families fighting to preserve their way of life against a tax they see as punitive and unjust, and it is. The government may find that in targeting agricultural inheritance tax, it has sown the seeds of a far larger political backlash than it ever anticipated.